Good morning. This is Dr. R. Kamalambeshwari, Associate Professor from Department of Industrial Biotechnology. And today I'm going to explain about the topic antigen antibody reactions from the subject immunology. The antigen antibody reactions are always highly specific. The interaction between the antigen and the antibody, which involves in the reaction, is called as, or it is termed as, antigen antibody reaction. They are often abbreviated as AGAP reactions, just and simple, and they form the basis for, say, humoral as well as the same antibody-mediated immunity, and they are used for the detection of various diseases, especially the antigens that are involved in diseases, and for some non-specific antigen like enzymes also. So the non-specific antigens like enzymes as well as the antigens that are responsible for causing many diseases can be detected by this antigen antibody reactions. As I told, the antigen antibody reaction was highly specific, and their specificity will in turn be rendered or in turn be visible during the antigen antibody reaction. And it refers to the ability of an individual antibody which combines with the specific type, which combines with a specific site to react with only one antigenic determinant called epitope. The epitope of an antigen reacts with, or it is highly specific with, the paratope of the antibody, and hence it is said as the antigen antibody reaction is highly specific. Once the epitope has specificity with the paratope of the antibody, the antigen antibody reactions can be enhanced. And each antibody binds to a specific antigen that in turn increases the interaction between them, like a lock and key model. Once the antigen epitope is specific with the paratope of the antibody, then they interact like a lock and key. So here various antigenic epitopes are shown just for example, and this antigenic epitope, since it has some specificity with the paratope of the antibody, the antibodies that reacts with the antigen highly match, and hence the antigen antibody reactions may be created. And here the antibodies, of course, they are of monomer, dimer, as well as pentameric types. For example, if we take the immunoglobulin, say immunoglobulin D, E, and G, they are of monomer. And if we take the immunoglobulin like IgA, then of course it is a dimer. And if we take the antibody IgM, of course it is a pentamer. So that is shown as an example. So this antigenic, the antigenic epitopes will have the specificity towards the monomeric paratope antibody, a monomeric antibody with their paratopes, or else they may have the specificity with the dimeric antibody, or else it may have the specificity with the pentameric antibody. So once the antigen antibody has been, once the epitope of the antigen has been combined with the paratope of the antibody, then they form an immune complex. So this immune complex is formed from the integral binding of an antibody to a soluble antigen. So antigen antibody complex is formed, which is in turn said to be an immune complex. So these are the types of antigen antibody reactions. There are several types like precipitation reaction, agglutination reaction, complement fixation reaction. Then ELISA, this is one of the important antigen antibody reaction, which is in turn able to detect many diseases. And ELISA stands for enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. And of course, we have something called immunofluorescence also. So these antigen antibody reactions are especially useful to find whether the individual has any antigen in their blood for some diseases. So the binding of antibodies to antigens will definitely inactivate the antigen by several types like neutralization, agglutination, or a precipitation of dissolved antigen, or else the antibodies may in turn activate the entire complement system like C1 to C4. Many different complements can be activated which is in turn leads to the cell lysis, cell lysis of antigen, which in turn leads to the disintegration of antigen. Once the antibodies process like neutralization, agglutination, and precipitation, then of course they enhances the phagocytosis. That means the antigen can be as a whole phagocytosis by the immune competent cells, and the antigen will be disintegrated. So once the antibody has been bounded with antigen, then of course, if it leads to the neutralization of the antigen, then of course they will bind to the antigen like viruses and or else on the bacteria. That will in turn cause the bacteria or the virus to get phagocytosis by many of the professional phagocytic cells like macrophages. And if it causes agglutination, then of course that will also leads to the process of phagocytosis by different say professional as well as non-professional phagocytic cells. And once it goes to precipitate, or once the antigen antibodies gets precipitated, then of course then also the antigen will be phagocytosis by the immune competent cells. And once the entire complement system gets activated, then of course the complement may in turn will act on the cell wall of the antigens. That will lead to cell lysis of the antigen. The entire cytoplasmic constituents will be released from the cell. That will cause the cell to go for cell lysis, which in turn leads to the rupture of the whole cell itself. So by this way, the antibody will inactivate the antigen and it protects the immune system from invasion of antigens. We'll see the type of antigen antibody reactions one by one. First, coming to precipitation. So it's a phenomena of aggregation of sensitized antigen on addition to specific antibody to the antigen in solution. And here, you have to make it a point, right? You have to make it a point, which is mediated by the soluble antibody and the soluble antigen in the solution. The precipitation is a reaction where the aggregation of antigen will be rendered once the antigen is soluble, as well as the antibody should be soluble in solution. So here you will see the precipitate, which is in turn formed by the soluble antigen and antibody. The antibody will be specific with the antigenic epitope, especially the antigenic epitope will go and bind to the paratope of the antibody, which in turn causes the antigen to get precipitated at the, especially at the bottom of the solution. The precipitation may also occur in two different types of media, like they may occur in a liquid or else they may occur in gel also. The precipitation can be allowed to occur in two different types of media, like in liquid as well as in gel. But always we have to make it a point, right? We have to make it a point, like the precipitation is a reaction which involves the soluble antigen and soluble antibody. Coming to the precipitation in liquids, you can carry out the reaction in such a way like you can place the constant amount of antibody in a series of tubes, and you can increase the concentration of antigen. So from this, once you increase the concentration of antigen, then of course the antigen antibody reaction will be enhanced, and the amount of precipitate in the tubes will be increasing, but that too at a certain level. Though you increase the concentration of antigen, the amount of precipitate won't be increased once the antigen antibody reaches its equivalence. So from that, you can find the ratio of the antigen antibody reaction, exactly the amount of antigen that has been reacted with the amount of antibody. So the antigen antibody reacts together, resulting in the formation of precipitate. And plotting the amount of precipitate against the increasing concentration of antigen will yield a precipitin curve. Especially this is a bell-shaped curve. So here you could find the precipitin curve. So the precipitation curve shows about three zones. One is the zone of antibody axis. The other one is the zone of equivalence axis. The other one is the zone of antigen axis. So here at the x-axis, the antigen that has been added in the solution, especially in the tubes, has been plotted. And in the y-axis, the antibody in the precipitate has been plotted. So here, if we concentrate on the zone of antibody excess, we could find the curve, of course, the concentration of precipitate gets increased. You can see the increased logarithmic state of the curve. So here, the zone of antibody is in excess. That means once you increase the concentration of antibody, then of course the amount of precipitate gets increased. So here you could find many of the antibodies left without binding with the antigen. You can find many of the free antibodies that has not been bounded with antigen. Next, the curve leads to the zone of equivalence where the antigen antibody is in equivalent state. So almost the antibodies that are found in this zone has been bounded with the epitope of the antigen. So here you can't find the unbound antibody or the unbound antigen. The antigen and the antibody has been equalized, and hence here you could find all the antibodies, almost all the antibodies has been bounded with the antigen. And next is the curve which leads to the zone of antigenic excess. Here we could find many of the antigen left free, which has not been bounded with antibody. So here we could say that though you increase the concentration of antigen, since the antigen has been already saturated with antibody, though you increase the concentration of antigen, those antigen has been left free since because they don't find any more antibodies to bind with. And that is said to be the zone of antigenic axis. So this precipitant curve is highly important so as to know about the amount of antigen that is present in the sample. So this precipitant curve has been used in many of the antigen-antibody reactions so as to know the amount of antigen that is present in the sample, as well as you can also find in reverse case the amount of antibody that is present in the sample also. Coming to the principle of this, as I already mentioned, the soluble antigen as well as the soluble antibody are involved in the reactions, of course, in proper proportion, which leads to the visible precipitate. Once the antigen and antibody are in equal proportion or in specific proportion, then the precipitate is formed. And the lattice formation leads to the visible precipitate formation, since because here you could find the antibody that has been bounded with the antigen forms a lattice. That means almost all the paratope of the antibody has been bounded with antigen, which in turn leads to the lattice formation. Because of this lattice formation, the precipitate has been formed, and the precipitate, of course, it is visible to our naked eye. Coming to the precipitation in gels, we have the concept of immunodiffusion. The precipitation in gels, of course, it is called as immunodiffusion. And you have two different types of immunodiffusion. One is said to be radial immunodiffusion. The other one is said to be double immunodiffusion. We will see one by one. Once a precipitation reaction is allowed to take place on the gel, then of course it is said to be a immunodiffusion reaction. So in this radial immunodiffusion, we can execute the procedure in such a way that the antibodies are allowed to mix on the gel, and the gel has been plated on a thick glass plate, right? So here, in this method, the agar gel or similar gels are used on the plates or petri plates, and both antigen and antibody diffuse freely in the gel system in all the directions. So they are allowed to move in all the directions. So in the next slide, probably I'll be showing the plate, so that time more understanding, the best we can understand to the app. So at a certain point, depending on the rate of diffusion and the concentration of the reactants, a zone of equivalence will be formed, which in turn seem to be a visible precipitate. So here we could find how the radium diffusion has been done. So in the agar gel, especially the gel has been prepared with agarose, and of course, and once the gel is at, once the agarose is at liquid state itself, once the agarose is formed, we can mix the antibody. So once the antibody has been mixed with the agarose, you can plate the agarose in the petri plate or else on the thick solid plate. So if you leave for some time, then of course agarose will be solidified. Now the well has to be created at the center of the agarose plate, and in the center of the well, you have to load the antigen. So now the antigen is allowed to diffuse on the plate, and once the zone of equivalence has been reached, then of course a precipitant ring will be formed. So here you could see the formation of precipitate ring. Of course, after the diffusion of antigen on the plate, it will take some time. That depends upon the antigen and antibody which is involved in the reaction. So the plate has to be left free for some time, and after that, once the precipitant ring has been observed, then of course we can confirm that the antigen is specific for the antibody. Of course, depending upon the intensity of the precipitant ring, the concentration of the antigen as well as the concentration of the antibody can be estimated. So here, if antigen or antibody preparations are complex, then of course the multiple bands are formed. Once the antigen and the antibody preparations are complex, then of course the multiple bands are formed, and they are again of two different types, like single diffusion method and double diffusion method. So in case of double diffusion method, the antibodies are not mixed with the agarose as like the earlier method. Here, the agarose, the liquid agarose has been melted, and of course they are casted on the plate and they are allowed to solidify. So after the agarose has been solidified in the on the glass plate, either on the petri plate or else on the thick glass plate, two wells uh, or found, two wells are created, and on one of the well the antibody is loaded, and on the other well the antigens are loaded. So once the antigen antibody reactions are enhanced, once the antigen antibody are diffused on the gel, then of course at the center of the plate we can infer the precipitate. So here the precipitant line has been formed, which in turn which in turn has been formed due to the diffusion of antigen and antibody. Of course, the precipitant line will be visible once the antigen and antibody are specific to each other, and the intensity of the precipitant line will in turn inform us about the concentration and the specificity of antigen with antibody. Next is about the agglutination reaction. As I mentioned in the earlier slide, agglutination is one of the type of antigen-antibody reaction. And here, we have to make it to a point the interaction between the antibody and the particulate or insoluble antigen results in visible clumping, which is said to be agglutination. So once the interaction between antibody and the insoluble antigen occurs, then of course it results in visible clumping of both say antigen as well as antibody, which is called as agglutination. So the antigens that are detected by agglutination reaction includes say WBCs, the red blood cells, the latex particles, the bacteria. So all these antigens can be detected by agglutination. So the antibody of the serum causes the cellular antigen to form clumps. Then of course they are called as agglutinins. So the antibodies that are involved in agglutination reaction are commonly called as agglutinins. So the antibody of the serum causes the cellular antigens to form clumps, and they are called as agglutinins. The particulate antigens that are segregated, they are called as agglutinogens. In simpler term, the antigens that are involved in agglutination are called as agglutinogens, and the antibodies that are involved in the agglutination are called as agglutinins. So agglutination can be performed in a tube or on a glass slide, Example, AB blood grouping. So our blood group can be inferred by agglutination reaction. So antibody is divalent since because two FAB fragments are there, and these two FAB fragments has the ability to bind with two different types of antigens at the same time, and hence they are often said to be divalent antibodies. And they cross-link the multivalent antigen to form clumps. In case of tube agglutination, the serum containing the antibody is diluted serially with saline, and in small test tubes, a constant volume of antigenic suspensions is added. So the serum containing antibody is diluted serially with saline. Uh, First, it has to be the tube agglutination can be performed with this procedure. The serum containing antibody is diluted serially, of course, with saline in small test tubes, and the constant volume of antigenic suspension is added to it. Then the control tube has to be kept. Of course, in control tube, no antiserum can be added. The presence of antibody is absent there, and the tubes are incubated until visible agglutination is observed. So definitely, if the antigen is specific to the antibody, the agglutination, the clumping of the antigen antibody can be seen in all the test tubes, but not in the control tube. So the tube showing highest agglutination is referred to as the titer. So the in one tube, among all the tubes, in one tube, definitely the high volume of the visible clumping can be seen, highest agglutination can be seen, and of course that test tube has been named as a titer tube. And what is its application? As I mentioned, this is useful for detecting antigens in the blood, especially the viral test which has been performed for the detection of Salmonella typhi, which causes typhoid fever, is done by this tube agglutination method. So here we could find the uh, antibody and the antigenic reaction which causes the agglutination. So in this, the antibody content of the patient's serum is measured by adding the constant amount of antigen, especially Salmonella typhi, which is used for the detection of, say, typhoid. And the test performed is said to be the viral test. And here the to the serially diluted serum. So 120, of course, it measures it informs us about the dilution rate. So 120, 140, 160, or 1 by 160, 1 by 320, 1 by 640, and there you have the control tube also. Here the titer, the highest agglutination is seen at the ratio or at the rate of 160, 1 by 160 dilution. And the agglutination can also be performed with the passive agglutination method. Here, in case of passive agglutination, the antigen is coated on the surface of the carrier particle. The antigen is not directly involved in agglutination reaction, and hence it is said to be a passive agglutination process. Here, the antigen is coated on the surface of the carrier particle. So this helps to convert the precipitation reaction to an agglutination reaction, making the reaction highly sensitive. And there are many more carrier particles that are employed in passive agglutination, and they are nothing but the RBCs, the latex particles, or bentonite. So any of this carrier particle can be used for coating the antigen. So the coated antigen will be involved in reaction. So when patient serum is mixed with this coated antigens, especially with the carrier particle, then it leads to the formation of agglutination reactions. So it is highly helpful in the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, especially for the reduction of RH factor. Rheumatoid arthritis, which is of course said to be a most common disease in many of the aged individuals. So here, the carrier particle, of course, it is coated with the soluble antigen. The soluble and the carrier particles, as I mentioned, it can be a RBC or else it can be a latex particle. And the carrier particle, of course, it is coated with the soluble antigen. And of course, it is said to be a coated particle. And now the coated particle will be allowed to react with antibody. And here the antibody will be bounded with the antigenic epitope, which is highly specific to each other. And here the formation of clumping is seen, which leads to the agglutination process. Here the heme agglutination test can be performed on RBCs also. It is of two different types. So active, in case of active type, the antigen is the RBC itself. The viruses can clump different blood cells from one species or another species. Of course, it is said to be the active heme agglutination processes. And example is the test that is used in AB blood grouping. So the ABO blood system, of course, the individual uh, uh, blood type can be inferred by the agglutination reaction. So here, if the RBCs has some antigens on blood surface as far as the type A, type B, and type AB has been concerned. So here the RBs, red blood cell surface proteins will be can be inferred, and in case of A agglutinogens, so if the RBCs has the surface antigen like A, then of course the B antibodies will be circulated in the serum. And if the RBC has the cell, and if the RBCs has antigen like B, then the A antibodies will be circulated in the serum. And if the RBCs has A as well as B antigen on the surface, then there won't be presence of antibodies against the A as well as B antigens in the serum. And if you take the individual with O blood group, then of course the RBCs is devoid of antigens, and hence what happens? The antibodies against the A antigen as well as B antigens will be circulated in the serum. So this agglutination reaction will in turn be useful for deciphering the blood group of the individual. Coming to passive agglutination, the antigen here is not the RBCs. The RBCs absorbs it and expresses it on the surface. So the antigen directly, the RBCs are not involved, but the antigen and the RBCs will be absorbing the antigens and they'll express them on the surface. So it will form the clump when of course they have been mixed with antibodies. And here the red blood cells are said to be the passive carriers. So here you could see how the red blood cells has absorbed the antigen, and of course how they have been expressed on the surface, and of course how the antibodies has been involved in the reaction. This is about the immunodiffusion. So it's a technique of studying the reactions between the antigen and antibody by observing the precipitate that has been formed by the combination of specific antigens and antibodies diffused in the cell in which they have been separately placed. So diffusion of antigen and antibody in the agarose matrix will in turn lead to the formation of cistern line, which is used for the detection of immunodiffusion reactions. Coming to the advantages of this immunodiffusion, the precipitin band is formed, so this is visible, which can be stained for preservation. And it can be used to detect or identify the cross reaction, as well as it could be used to identify the non-identity between antigens in a mixture. When mixture of antigens are there, then of course, if you want to find which is highly specific with the antibody, then of course we can go for this immunodiffusion reaction. And coming to the types of immunodiffusion, they are classified on the basis of number of reactants that has been involved in the reaction, as well as it will be classified based on the direction of diffusion. Next is about the immunoelectrophoresis. So this immunoelectrophoresis is a method in which different antigens are separated according to their charge as well as by the presence of electrical field. So here it's a process of combination of immunodiffusion and electrophoresis. So we'll be running the gel with the help of electricity, and the antigen will be allowed to diffuse in the gel matrix. Of course, the antigens are allowed to move on the gel matrix with the help of electricity, and hence it is highly charge dependent. And this immunoelectrophoresis is useful for detection of specific antigen with specific antibody, as well as, of course, we can find the exact concentration of antigen that is involved in the sample. So here, the antibody will be coated on the trough. The large well will be created on uh, the gel matrix, and of course the antibody will be loaded, and the antigen will be loaded on the small wells as we are seeing in the representation. And once the antibody starts to diffuse and the antigen starts to diffuse, the precipitin line will be formed, and the intensity of the precipitin line will in turn allow to infer us about the specificity of antigen and antibody that is involved in the reaction. So this immunoelectrophoresis combines the method of immunodiffusion as well as the electrophoresis technique. So coming to the procedure of this immunoelectrophoresis, a drop of antigen is placed into a well in agar or on the which is present on the glass slide, and electric current is passed through the agar. So antigen will move in the electric field according to their size as well as according to the charge, and a trough is cut into agar, and antibody is poured into it, and the diffusion is allowed to occur. And as the antigen antibody diffuse, they form the series of lines that we can infer from the representation itself. And number of antigens can be identified in the serum. So first, in the separation of antigens, we could see how the antigens are being separated depending upon the electric field. So you can see the plus charge at the left side, and you can see the negative charge at the right side, and the antigens are separated first based on the charges. And of course, a trough is created in the representation too. The antiserum is of course poured on the trough. So a trough is created like a long well, and in the trough, the antiserum has been loaded. Now the diffusion of in the representation 3, we could see the diffusion of antigen and antibody. So the precipitin line, like a precipitin arc, it has been created. So the precipitin arc, which has been shown in pale blue color, of course, it is allowed. It makes us to infer about the specificity of antigen with antibody. Next is about the countercurrent immunoelectrophoresis. So it depends upon the movement of antigen towards the anode, the positively charged electrode, and of course antibody towards the cathode and the negatively charged electrode through agar in the electric field. So here you could see the representation like the movement of antigen and antibody in the electric field, which in turn leads to the formation of a precipitin line. Coming to the procedure for this electrophoresis, countercurrent electrophoresis, it is of course performed on a glass slide with agarose, in which pair of wells are punched, and one well of course is going to be loaded with antigen, the other is of course it has been loaded with antibody, as like we have seen in the earlier slide, and the electric current is passed, and the migration is visible in 30 to 60 minutes. So this is to be the incubation period for running the gel. And of course, it's a rapid technique and highly specific method for the detection of antigen and antibody in the serum, CSF, and other body fluids for the detection of diseases. And mainly, it has been used for the detection of hepatitis B surface antigens. Next is about the rocket electrophoresis. So here, it is an adaptation of radial immunodiffusion, which is developed by the scientist Lauren. And it is of course called rocket electrophoresis due to the appearance of precipitin bands in the form of or in the shape of cone-like structures. So here you could see in the representation like the band is going to be formed as the cone-like structure, like a rocket appearance. And here the antibody has been loaded in the gel. That means once the agarose is warm, then the antibody will be allowed to mix with the agarose. And of course, the antigens are going to be loaded on the agarose gel by the formation of wells. And the entire plate will be kept in electrophoresis in the electrophoretic chamber, and the electricity will be passed. So the after the stipulated time, say 30 to 60 minutes, then we can see the formation of this cone-like structure, which is said to be the formation of skin band. And depending upon the length of this precipitin band, we can look at the concentration of antigen as well as the specificity of antigen to the antibody. Coming to the procedure of this, the antibody is incorporated in the gel, and the antigens are placed in wells which has to be cut in the gel, and the electric current is passed, which in turn leads to the migration of antigen into agar, and this results in the formation of precipitin cone-shaped curve, and which is going to resemble the rocket, and hence it is said to be rocket immunoelectrophoresis. And the height of this rocket, or in turn the length of this rocket precipitin curve, is directly proportional to the concentration of antigen. And this is useful for the quantitative estimation of antigen in serum. So here the increasing antigen concentration can be measured by increase in the height of the precipitin curve or the precipitin arc, which has been formed in the uh, cone-like shape by the precipitin arc. The antibodies has been loaded in agarose well, and the wells are cut on the agarose well in which the antigens are loaded. So once the antigenic concentration is increased, then the height of the precipitin arc, which has been shown in the form of a rocket, has also been increased. Here, the pH of the entire experiment is about 8.6, and the entire electrophoresis is done in order to know about the concentration of antigen that is present in the sample.